Before we begin, if you want the full continuation of these stories, more uncensored 18-plus ancient BL content, extended scenes, and unlimited royal forbidden romance, you can join us on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. YouTube does not allow us to show or monetize everything freely here, so the deeper and more intense versions are waiting for you there. You can find the link in the description and pinned comment. Listen to the wind. It's howling outside, isn't it? That was the exact sound Xie An heard on the night his entire life was supposed to end. He sat in the back of a swaying, freezing carriage, wrapped in layers of heavy red wedding silk that felt more like a burial shroud. Outside, the winter snow of the Great Northern Empire was falling so thick it looked like the sky itself was collapsing. Xie An was a prince. Or, at least, he used to be. His kingdom in the south had fallen 3 months ago, and as the ultimate symbol of submission, the victorious Northern Emperor had demanded a tribute. Not gold, not land, but the Southern Kingdom's most beautiful royal son, sent to marry the North's most terrifying weapon. The Prince Regent, Grand General Beichen. The carriage jolted, and Xie An gripped the edge of his seat, his knuckles turning white. He knew the rumors. Everyone in the world knew the rumors. Beichen was the Empire's war god. They said he was a monster shaped like a man. They said he drank the blood of his enemies, that his sword had taken tens of thousands of lives, and that his eyes held no humanity. They said his manor was a graveyard for anyone who crossed him. And now, Xie An was being delivered directly to his door, a fragile, disposable hostage bride. The capital city outside was buzzing with cruel excitement. The carriage rolled through the snowy streets, and Xie An could hear the whispers of the citizens through the thin wooden walls. The southern prince is so frail, I give him a week. A week? The Grand General will snap his neck on the wedding night. I heard the general's last 2 attendants went mad from fear just looking at him. Xie An closed his eyes and took a slow, trembling breath. Fine, he thought. If I am going to die, I will die with my chin raised. I will not beg. I will not cower. The carriage finally came to a harsh, grinding halt. The heavy iron gates of the Prince Regent's manor groaned open. The atmosphere outside shifted instantly. The cheerful, cruel murmurs of the city faded into a suffocating, terrifying silence. It was as if the very air around the manor had frozen solid. Open the doors. The voice that cut through the winter night was low, calm, and entirely lethal. Xie An froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. The heavy curtain of the carriage was thrown back. The freezing wind rushed in, biting at Xie An's pale skin, but he didn't feel the cold. All he could see was the man standing before him, Beichen. He was dressed in pitch-black ceremonial robes, embroidered with dark silver threads that caught the moonlight. He was incredibly tall, broad-shouldered, an imposing mountain of a man who looked like he had been carved out of war and exhaustion. He was older than Xie An by at least a decade, and his face, gods, his face. He was terrifying, but he was also devastatingly, unfairly handsome. A harsh, rugged kind of beauty. A jagged scar cut violently across his jawline, disappearing into the high collar of his dark robes. Another faint silver line crossed over the bridge of his nose. His dark eyes, sharp as a hawk's, deep as an abyss, locked onto Xie An. The silence stretched. The surrounding guards and servants held their breath, terrified the general was about to draw his sword and end the marriage right there. Xie An's survival instincts screamed at him to look away, to submit, but he forced his chin up. He met that terrifying gaze head-on. A strange, completely unreadable expression flickered across Beichen's scarred face. It was so fast, Xie An thought he imagined it. The massive, terrifying war god took a slow step forward, and then he did something no one expected. He reached out a large, heavily calloused hand. His voice softened, just a fraction. The snow is deep, step carefully. Xie An stared at the hand. It was enormous. It could probably crush his skull with a single squeeze. But if he refused it now, he would humiliate the general in front of his entire army. With a racing heart, Xie An slowly placed his trembling, pale fingers into Beichen's palm. It was warm, so incredibly warm. And the grip was startlingly gentle. Beichen didn't pull him, didn't drag him. He simply supported Xie An's weight, helping him step down from the carriage with a care that left the entire courtyard in stunned, breathless silence. The war god was treating his captive hostage bride like a piece of fragile glass. The wedding ceremony that followed was a blur of red candles, bowing to the heavens, and silent, heavy tension. Xie An went through the motions perfectly, his posture straight, his expression calm, though his stomach was tied in knots. Then came the part he was truly dreading, the bridal chamber. The doors clicked shut. Xie An sat rigidly on the edge of the enormous, silk-draped bed. The room was bathed in the warm, flickering glow of dozens of red candles. The door opened. Beichen stepped inside. Xie An immediately stiffened, his fingers gripping the heavy red silk of his robes. This was it. Would the monster take what was his? Would he be cruel? Would he force a consummation to humiliate the southern prince? Beichen didn't even look at the bed. Slowly, heavily, the older man began to remove his heavy outer coat. The movement revealed the sheer width of his shoulders, the thick muscles of his back, and the stiff, guarded way he carried himself. He looked exhausted, not just physically tired, but a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that seemed to weigh down his very soul. Beichen walked over to the small wooden tea table on the other side of the room, far away from the bed. He sat down heavily on the low couch. Silence hung in the room, thick and suffocating. Finally, Xie An couldn't take it anymore. "Are you?" His voice wavered slightly, and he hated it. He cleared his throat. "Are you going to stand there all night, my lord?" Beichen looked up. His dark eyes caught the candlelight. "You do not need to fear me," the general said quietly. His voice was a deep, gravelly rumble. Xie An blinked. "Excuse me?" "This marriage was a political decree by my nephew, the emperor. A leash around my neck and a cage for you." Beichen poured himself a cup of cold tea, his expression completely blank. "I have no interest in forcing a terrified captive into my bed. You will sleep there. I will sleep here. Tomorrow, you may arrange your own quarters in the West Wing. We do not need to cross paths if you do not wish to." Xie An stared at him, completely dumbfounded. Wait, the bloodthirsty monster was offering him separate bedrooms and personal space? "I am not terrified of you," Xie An blurted out. It was a lie, mostly, but his pride wouldn't let him accept the pity. Beichen paused. He slowly lifted his gaze, meeting Xie An's eyes across the candlelit room. For a long moment, he just looked at him, really looked at him. And once again, Xie An saw that profound, heavy sadness hiding behind the dangerous mask of the war god. "You should be," Beichen said softly. Then, he lay down on the narrow, uncomfortable wooden couch, turning his back to the massive, comfortable bed. Xie An sat there in the red silk for a long time. What kind of ridiculous, tragic man was this? The next few weeks in the Prince Regent's manor left the servants utterly confused. Because the delicate, doomed hostage prince did not die. He didn't cry, he didn't cower, and he certainly didn't hide in the West Wing. Instead, Xie An became a menace. A very elegant, very observant menace. He quickly realized two things about his new husband. First, the rumors of Beichen's cruelty were entirely fabricated by a paranoid imperial court. And second, the Grand General was absolutely, undeniably terrible at taking care of himself. The man was a walking disaster of self-neglect. He skipped meals. He sat in freezing rooms reading military reports. He drank cold tea. He slept maybe 3 hours a night. And worst of all, he pushed through visible, agonizing chronic pain without ever uttering a single complaint. Xie An simply couldn't stand it. He was raised with royal grace and a sharp mind. He couldn't just sit in a garden all day while his supposed captor slowly worked himself into an early grave. One night, around the second watch, Xie An walked into the general's private study holding a tray. He stopped in the doorway. Beichen was sitting at his heavy wooden desk, but he wasn't writing. His large hand was gripping the edge of the wood so tightly his knuckles were completely white. His head was bowed, his breathing ragged and uneven. A sheen of cold sweat dotted his forehead. Pain. Agonizing, blinding pain. Xie An set the tray down with a sharp clack. Beichen's head snapped up. His hand instantly dropped to the hilt of his sword, his eyes wild and dangerous for a fraction of a second, before he realized who it was. The tension drained out of him, replaced by a stiff, awkward posture. "You should be asleep," Beichen grunted, trying to steady his breathing. And you shouldn't look like you're about to pass out at your desk, Xie An shot back, walking directly up to him. Where is the pain? I am fine. It is nothing. Do not lie to me. I am not one of your trembling soldiers. Xie An crossed his arms, staring down at the massive man. Is it your shoulder? Your back? Beichen looked away, his jaw tight. An old injury. The winter cold sinks into the bones. It passes. It doesn't pass. It festers. Xie An sighed, shaking his head. He turned around, quickly gathering a small brass brazier and a thick padded towel. He held the towel over the hot coals until it was steaming with dry heat. He walked back to the general. Take off your outer robe. Beichen froze. His dark eyes widened slightly. What? I said, take it off, Xie An demanded, holding the hot towel. The general looked incredibly tense. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Xie An, that is not appropriate. I am trying to treat your muscle spasms. You impossible man, not seduce you, Xie An snapped, though he felt a sudden, furious blush creeping up the back of his own neck. Beichen stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then, slowly, with clumsy fingers, he untied his heavy black robe and let it slide off his shoulders. Xie An forgot how to breathe. The general's back was a canvas of survival. Thick, raised scars crisscrossed over heavily muscled shoulders. Slash marks, burn scars, puncture wounds. It wasn't ugly, it was heartbreaking. It was the physical map of a man who had stood between his country and destruction 1,000 times. A massive, jagged scar ran across his lower back, a devastating sword strike that had clearly severed muscle and nerve. Xie An's expression softened completely. All his irritation vanished. How are you even walking with this? He whispered. One adapts, Beichen replied quietly, his deep voice vibrating in the quiet room. Xie An stepped closer. The air between them suddenly felt very thick, very private. Carefully, gently, Xie An pressed the steaming hot towel against the knotted, ruined muscles of the general's lower back. Beichen let out a sharp, ragged gasp. His entire massive body stiffened. Too hot? Xie An asked quickly, pulling back. No, Beichen's voice was rough, thicker than usual. No, don't stop. Xie An continued. He pressed the warmth into the skin, his slender, pale fingers occasionally brushing against the general's scarred, fever-hot skin. Every time they touched, Beichen would tremble slightly, just a microscopic shudder. The room was completely silent, save for the crackle of the brazier and the heavy, slow rhythm of Beichen's breathing. It feels better, the general finally whispered into the dark. Of course it does, Xie An murmured softly, his eyes tracing the line of Beichen's broad shoulders. What Xie An didn't see was the way Beichen's hands were curled into tight fists on his lap, as the fearsome war god tried desperately to control the wild, entirely inappropriate racing of his own heart. And if you are enjoying this forbidden royal tension, remember, the extended and uncensored 18+ continuation is available on Patreon at SpicyAncientBL. The link is in the description and pinned comment. After that night, everything shifted. The terrifying manner became strangely domestic. Xie An began bullying the Grand General of the Empire on a daily basis. Why are you eating field rations for dinner? Xie An would demand, swatting a piece of hard-dried meat out of the general's hand. We have an entire kitchen staff. Eat the hot fish. I am accustomed to rations, Beichen would reply, looking utterly bewildered as Xie An shoved a bowl of fragrant, steaming soup in front of him. You are accustomed to suffering. Eat the soup. The servants watched in sheer, unadulterated terror. No one ordered the Prince Regent around. Emperors had tried and failed. Yet here was this delicate, beautiful hostage prince, aggressively fixing the general's fur collar, confiscating his midnight reports, and forcing him to drink medicinal herbal teas. And Beichen, the terrifying monster of the north? He just sat there and let him do it. In fact, he seemed to secretly love it. The dark, heavy shadows beneath his eyes began to lighten. The stiff, guarded way he held his shoulders relaxed whenever Xie An walked into the room. One snowy afternoon, Xie An couldn't find his husband in the study. He wrapped a thick white fur cloak around himself and wandered out into the massive, frozen royal gardens. He followed the sound of quiet, deep murmuring toward the old plum blossom pavilion. He stepped through the moon gate and stopped dead in his tracks. There, sitting on the cold stone steps, was the bloodthirsty Grand General Beichen, and swarming all around him were at least 5 stray, incredibly muddy wolfhound puppies. Beichen, dressed in thousands of gold coins worth of imperial silk, was sitting in the dirt. He was holding a tiny, whimpering gray puppy in one massive, scarred hand, carefully feeding it pieces of cooked meat with his fingers. Another puppy was chewing on his expensive leather boot. Xie An covered his mouth, his eyes wide. Beichen heard the rustle of silk and looked up. He froze. The great war god actually looked panicked. Silence stretched between them. Xie An slowly pointed a finger. "You raise stray dogs in the imperial garden." Beichen cleared his throat, his expression painfully stiff. They breached the outer wall. They were starving in the snow. Right. Xie An's lips twitched. A major security breach. Truly terrifying. Beichen looked down at the puppy in his hand, looking incredibly awkward. The court must not know. They already view me as a beast. If they know I harbor strays, they would think you're a soft, ridiculous man. Xie An finished for him. He walked forward, the snow crunching beneath his boots, until he was standing right in front of the general. He slowly crouched down. The scent of sandalwood and winter pine wafted off Beichen's clothes. "Here," Xie An murmured softly. He reached out. His pale, delicate fingers brushed against Beichen's rough, scarred hands as he took the small gray puppy from him. The brush of their skin sent a jolt of electricity straight up Xie An's arm. He ignored it, focusing on the puppy. "He's beautiful." Xie An smiled, scratching the pup behind the ears. Beichen wasn't looking at the dog. He was looking at Xie An. He was staring at the way the winter sunlight caught the southern prince's dark eyelashes, the way his lips curved into a genuine bright smile. "Yes," Beichen murmured, his voice incredibly low, heavy with an emotion he was trying very hard to hide. "Beautiful." Xie An glanced up, catching that intense, burning gaze. His breath hitched in his throat. Suddenly, the freezing winter air felt dangerously hot. He quickly looked away, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Careful," his mind whispered. "This is dangerous. You are starting to care for him." But it was already too late. The ultimate test of their strange, delicate relationship came a month later, during the imperial winter banquet. The young emperor, Beichen's nephew, was a paranoid, sharp-minded ruler. He had arranged this marriage to humiliate the southern prince and to keep an eye on his overpowered uncle. The grand hall was filled with music, dancers, and hundreds of nobles in glittering robes. Xie An sat beside Beichen at the high table. For hours, Xie An endured the mocking whispers, the side eyes, and the thinly veiled insults from the northern court. "Such a delicate flower the south produces," a drunken minister sneered, raising his cup toward Xie An. "Tell me, prince, do you faint when the grand general draws his sword? Or do you hide under the bed?" The entire hall fell silent. The tension spiked. Xie An gripped his silver cup, his jaw tightening. He opened his mouth to deliver a sharp, cutting reply, but before he could speak, clang. Beichen set his own cup down on the wooden table. It wasn't a loud sound, but it echoed through the massive hall like a thunderclap. The music instantly stopped. The dancers froze. The drunken minister went pale, sweating profusely. Beichen didn't yell. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't even look at the minister. He simply turned his head, his dark, terrifying eyes sweeping slowly over the crowd. "My husband," Beichen said, his voice cold, quiet, and absolutely lethal, "has more courage in his breath than this entire court has in its blood. The next man who speaks to him without lowering his eyes will lose his tongue." Absolute dead silence. No one dared to even breathe. Underneath the table, hidden by the long silk tablecloth, a large, warm hand found Xie An's trembling fingers. Beichen's thumbs slowly brushed over Xie An's knuckles. A silent, grounding promise. "I have you. You are safe." Xie An stared at the side of his husband's face, his heart expanding so fast it physically ached in his chest. Later that night, the nightmares came. It was the dark hours of the morning. Xie An was jolted awake by a sudden, violent gasp. He sat up. The room was dark, lit only by the pale moonlight filtering through the paper screens. Across the room, on the narrow wooden couch, Beichen was sitting bolt upright. The general's breathing was ragged, harsh, tearing from his throat. Sweat gleamed on his bare shoulders. His hands were gripping the wooden frame of the couch so hard the wood was splintering. Xie An didn't think. He threw off his silk blankets and rushed across the cold floor. "Beichen," he whispered, dropping to his knees beside the couch. The general violently flinched, pulling back into the shadows. Don't touch me. There's blood. It's everywhere." "There's no blood," Xie An said softly. "You're in the manor. It's winter. We're safe." The screaming. Beichen choked out, burying his face in his massive hands. It never stops. Xie An felt a tear prick his eyes. This man, this terrifying legend who protected the entire world, had absolutely no one to protect him from his own mind. Xie An reached forward. He gently wrapped his hands around Beichen's thick, trembling wrists. He slowly pulled the general's hands away from his face. Beichen's dark eyes were wide, haunted, completely shattered. "Look at me," Xie An whispered fiercely. "Look at me, Beichen." The general's gaze locked onto Xie An's face. "You are here, with me." Xie An moved closer, sliding onto the edge of the couch. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around the massive, scarred man, pulling Beichen's head down until it rested against his own chest. Beichen stiffened instantly, but Xie An just held him tighter, running his fingers through the general's dark, sweat-dampened hair. "Breathe," Xie An murmured into the quiet room. "Just listen to my heart. Breathe with me." Slowly, agonizingly, the tension began to drain from Beichen's body. The war god collapsed into the embrace, burying his face into the crook of Xie An's neck. His heavy arms came up to wrap around Xie An's waist, holding on as if Xie An was the only solid thing left in the universe. They stayed like that for a long time, the scent of sandalwood and sweat, the warmth of skin against skin. "Why?" Beichen's voice was a rough, broken whisper against Xie An's skin. "Why are you kind to me?" Xie An closed his eyes, resting his chin on Beichen's shoulder. "Because you deserve it," Xie An answered honestly. "Because you are a good man, Beichen. And because He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The heavy silence in the room spoke volumes. Beichen slowly pulled back, just enough to look at Xie An's face. In the pale moonlight, the distance between them was nothing. Just inches. Beichen's gaze dropped to Xie An's lips, then back up to his eyes. The air grew incredibly thick, sensual, heavy with unspoken desire. Beichen lifted a shaking, calloused hand, his knuckles lightly brushing against Xie An's soft cheek. The touch was so reverent, so incredibly careful, like he was touching a deity. Xie An's breath hitched. He leaned into the touch, his eyes fluttering shut. But Beichen stopped. He slowly pulled his hand away, his chest heaving with restraint. "You should go back to bed," he whispered hoarsely. "You will freeze." Xie An wanted to scream in frustration, but he nodded, his heart racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. He knew right then that he had entirely, completely fallen in love with his captor. The climax of their unspoken dance came 2 months later, during the Spring Lantern Festival. The capital was a sea of golden light and music. The emperor had mandated that all royal family members attend the public procession. Xie An walked through the crowded streets, wrapped in a beautiful blue cloak, with Beichen walking half a step behind him, a dark, imposing shadow silently guarding his back. Xie An was smiling, watching the lanterns float up into the night sky. And then the music stopped. A sharp, whistling sound pierced the air. Thwack! A heavy crossbow bolt slammed into the wooden stall, just inches from Xie An's head. Screams erupted, chaos exploded in the streets. From the rooftops, black-clad assassins rained down, their blades glinting in the lantern light. It was a targeted ambush. Everything happened in a terrifying blur of motion. Beichen moved faster than humanly possible. He seized Xie An by the waist, violently pulling him behind his massive body, just as 3 assassins lunged forward. The heavy ring of steel against steel rang out. Beichen had drawn his sword. Xie An stumbled back, his heart in his throat. He watched in awe and sheer terror as the man he had been domesticating with tea and puppies transformed back into the terrifying war god of the north. Beichen was lethal. He moved with a brutal, graceful efficiency. Blood splashed across the snowy cobblestones. But there were too many of them. They realized they couldn't beat the general, so they aimed for his weak point. They aimed for Xie An. An assassin broke past the line, his curved dagger swinging straight for Xie An's chest. Xie An braced for the impact, throwing his arms up. But the blade never hit him. Beichen threw himself in the path of the blade. The dagger sliced deeply across Beichen's upper arm, tearing through silk and muscle. Beichen didn't even flinch. He grabbed the assassin by the throat and slammed him into the stone wall, ending the threat instantly. The remaining assassins, seeing their failure, threw smoke bombs and vanished into the night. The street was utterly silent, save for the crackling of burning lanterns. Beichen instantly spun around, his chest heaving, his sword dripping blood onto the snow. His eyes were wide, frantic. Xie An. Beichen dropped his sword. It clattered loudly on the stone. He rushed forward, grabbing Xie An by the shoulders. His massive hands were trembling violently. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Where are you injured?" "I'm fine." Xie An grabbed Beichen's hands. "I'm fine, Beichen. It's you. You're bleeding." Dark red blood was soaking through the black silk of Beichen's sleeve, dripping rapidly onto the ground. "It's nothing," Beichen gasped, completely ignoring his own wound. He pulled Xie An against his chest, holding him so tightly, Xie An could barely breathe. "Thank the gods. If they had touched you..." Back at the manor, the atmosphere was chaotic. Guards were mobilizing, searching the city. But inside the general's private bedchamber, it was completely quiet. Xie An had ordered all the servants out. He stood over Beichen, who was sitting on the edge of the large bed. Xie An's hands were stained with blood as he carefully washed the deep gash on Beichen's arm. He was furious. His hands were shaking with adrenaline and fear. "You absolute idiot," Xie An hissed, tightly wrapping a white linen bandage around the thick bicep. "You threw your body in front of a blade. You have a sword. You could have parried." Beichen sat silently, watching Xie An's frantic, beautiful face. "He was too close to you. I am not made of sugar. I would have survived a glancing cut. You took a deep tissue wound." Xie An tied the bandage tightly and finally looked up, ready to yell some more. But the words died in his throat. Beichen was staring at him. The look in the older man's dark eyes was so intense, so overwhelmingly heavy with devotion and desperate need, it pinned Xie An to the floor. "I cannot lose you," Beichen said, his voice a low, rough rumble. "Xie An, if something happened to you, I would burn this entire empire to ash." Xie An's breath hitched. The bloody basin of water was forgotten. The danger was forgotten. There was only the two of them, in the warm candlelight. Slowly, Beichen reached out with his uninjured arm. He wrapped his large hand around the back of Xie An's neck, his thumb resting lightly against Xie An's jaw. The heat radiating from his palm was intoxicating. "May I?" Beichen whispered, his dark eyes dropping to Xie An's lips. The terrifying war god was asking for permission. Trembling, Xie An didn't answer with words. He grabbed the front of Beichen's blood-stained robe and pulled him down. The kiss was explosive. It was desperate, frantic, born of fear and months of agonizing, slow-burn tension. Beichen let out a low, heavy groan, his arm wrapping around Xie An's waist, pulling him flush against his chest. His lips were slightly rough, demanding but incredibly reverent, devouring Xie An's mouth like a man dying of thirst. Xie An gasped into the kiss, parting his lips, letting the general deepen it. He tangled his fingers into Beichen's dark hair, kissing him back with every ounce of frustration and love he had built up over the winter. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing heavily, their foreheads resting against each other. "You talk too much, General," Xie An whispered against his lips, smiling breathlessly. A rare, devastatingly handsome smile finally broke across Beichen's scarred face. He pressed a soft, lingering kiss to the corner of Xie An's mouth. "Then I will stop talking," Beichen murmured, pulling him closer into the warmth of the bed. Months later, spring bloomed fully in the northern capital. The emperor eventually stopped trying to test them, mostly because he was completely exhausted by his uncle's new behavior. The Grand General, the terrifying monster of the North, now routinely skipped afternoon military drills because his husband wanted to go to the market. He is domesticated, the emperor complained to his advisors. Incorrect. Xie An would smile proudly when he heard the rumors. He was always soft. You people were just entirely blind. Late one night, the rain pattered softly against the wooden roof of the manor. Xie An lay in the massive silk bed. Beside him, fast asleep, was Beichen. The general's arm was thrown heavily across Xie An's waist, keeping him close, keeping him safe. Nestled near Beichen's chest, curled into a tiny ball of fur, was one of the gray wolfhound puppies. Xie An reached out in the dark, gently tracing the silver scar over his husband's nose. Beichen stirred slightly, his eyes opening halfway, sleep-heavy and peaceful. He pulled Xie An tighter against him, burying his face in his hair. "You're awake," Beichen murmured. "Just watching you," Xie An whispered back. Beichen pressed a warm kiss to his forehead, his heavy eyes drifting shut again. For the first time in his life, the war god of the North had no nightmares waiting for him in the dark. Only warmth, only love, only home. If you want the next part, the uncensored continuation, and more unlimited 18+ Ancient Royal BL stories, come join Spicy Ancient BL on Patreon. The link is waiting for you in the description and pinned comment.